Welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. We got a great show for you tonight, but before we get started, as always, chime in and tell me where you're tuning in from. I'd love to know who you are and where you're listening to us from across the globe. Of course, our goal here is to reach 100 million people with the message of love, light, hope, and health. And it just fuels me to know where you're coming from. So let me know where you're coming from. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that's very, very timely. It's holiday eating, right? And this is the time of the year where I'm going to use some pretty graphic analogies tonight. And if I offend you, you have permission to be offended. But this is the time where people get a little bit aggressive with their food. And so I like to use the word food terrorist. You get it from all directions this time of the year. You get it from friends, you get it from colleagues at work, you get it at parties. If you go to, the different holiday parties, you get it from family members, you get it from pretty much everybody that you know. They all want you to eat something that might hurt you, even though they know that it potentially could hurt you. Everybody wants to tell you just a little bite, just take a small bite, just a little bit won't hurt. Like, these are the things that we all commonly hear. And a big part of the reason for this is because the rest of the world, if you're new to the show, maybe this doesn't apply to you, but the rest of the world eat garbage. I mean, this is really what it's boiled down to. If you live in a processed country, eating garbage equals normal, right? And the problem with this is that the holiday time is when people want to share their food, right? They want to share garbage with each other. And so if eating well were the norm, then we wouldn't have so much of a problem here. But because eating garbage and eating junk food and eating highly processed food and eating foods that contain ingredients that you're reactive to and eating food that's just not plain good for you is the social norm. And remember that eating is also love, right? So going back to the psychology, a lot of people express their love for their family members. They express the love for the people around them by sharing food. I mean, this is why we all break bread together. We get together literally to have meals together because there's a connection. There's a social connection around that. And it's true, eating is love. But if eating garbage is normal, then eating ceases to be love, and eating now becomes self-destruction and purposeful destruction. And if people around you aren't aware of that, and if they're not embracing that healthy food is actually important for health, then it becomes a big struggle during the holiday time. Because why? Because if your family, if your friends, again, they're asking you to eat just a small bite or just something, just a little won't hurt, right? See, we all hear that. Then what they're really asking you to do is to commit self-harm. And that's, this is where you have to draw the line. So the show tonight is about kind of helping you all navigate, like, family members and loved ones and friends, because if you don't navigate them, they will navigate you in the wrong direction, and they will make you extremely, extremely sick. And that's what we all try to prevent. And remember, the other social norm around holiday eating happens on January 1st. Okay, and this is the classic, right? The New Year resolution. So that New Year resolution is another kind of classic occurrence. It's a social paradigm. And what is it really that's happening? If we really play it out this way, this is the truth. This is the hard truth. It's a lot of people eat garbage, express their love by sharing that garbage, and destroy their health over a 2-month time frame. So we got, all of Thursday or all of Thanksgiving, and then we have, the whole Christmas holiday party extravaganza, right? All the way up through the end of December. And then on January 1st, everybody says, well, I'm no longer going to continue to destroy myself with food, and we're going to make a New Year's resolution. Most people's New Year's resolutions revolve around weight loss, although many of them also revolve around health, improved health. And so I tell you, don't make a New Year's resolution on January 1st. Make a health resolution tonight. Make a health resolution before you go into Thanksgiving and Christmas. Before you go into that, decide that you want to be healthy, and don't allow yourself, to fall into this trap of garbage equals love, because it's going to get you into trouble. So if you are trying to figure out how you're going to express this message without offending everybody that loves you. Like, that's the art, right? It's the art of this communication. How then do you let grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncle, whoever it is in your family, maybe people are, there's traditional recipes in families. So you go to, grandma's, maybe she makes a special cookie. You go to your aunt's, maybe she makes a special cake or whatever it might be. How do you let these people know that you're not going to be able to partake in this kind of eating to damage yourself anymore? How do you let them know in such a way where they're not being offended by you not eating their food? Because the first thing that's going to happen in this scenario is if you tell them no, you say no, then the first thing they do is they take offense, right? They go on the offensive and they tell you just one bite, just a little won't hurt. Or they start calling you a health nut, right? And so, whatever that looks like, usually it's some delineation of this. And any of you that are on the gluten-free or the no grain, no pain diet, you've probably maybe already experienced this to a certain extent. You tell them, no, I can't have that. They say, oh, but why not? Just one bite. And then they start basically picking at your diet and trying to criticize you. And the reason, I want you to just understand the psychology behind this. The reason why they would call this name, reason why they might call you a name or try to get you to do this is not because they're trying to get you to change. It's just the same psychology behind cigarette smokers, people that smoke, and they know it's not good for them, but they do it anyway. And if you are a smoker and you're trying to quit, what ends up happening is they tell you, you don't need to quit, just come on out and have a cigarette. Like that's the mentality. They don't want you to quit, not because they don't want you to be healthy. They don't want you to quit because if you quit, then they have to start looking at themselves a little bit more, aggressively and asking themselves the same questions. Well, if you won't eat it because it's not good for you, well, why should I eat it? Maybe I should be the one who's also not eating it, and maybe I should follow suit with you. But people don't want to do that because people fear change. That is the psychology, right? Is that fear of change. This right here has to do with fear of change, but not fear of your change, but fear of their own change. They won't change unless their health is deteriorated enough to the point where their pain is greater than their fear. And a lot of people aren't ready for that yet. And unfortunately, that's the case. It's just that instead of acknowledging that what we're eating isn't healthy and just making that change because it makes sense, because our bodies are our temples and we should care for our bodies and then we should hold our bodies dear and sacred, most people will wait until their body's completely broken down before accepting that change. And maybe many of you, this is what happened to you as well. I know I didn't grow up the healthiest. And it wasn't until I was a child of predominantly an obese child. And that's when I made the change. And it was a personal decision that I made to start eating better and to start exercising, and that was the pain for me, right? What was the pain for you? Everybody has to hit that fear of change pain point before they can kind of reverse engineer that psychology. So again, how do you have that conversation with the people that you're going to go to a party with? How do you have that conversation with the people who you love and you care about, but you don't want to be forced or coerced into this eating extravaganza of self-deprecation? And so let's talk about how to have that conversation. Number one, it's to plan for it. So we've got to have a plan. And the planning is, in part, the planning is knowing where you're going to be, knowing where you're going to go. So if you're going to go somewhere to a family or a relative's house, then you have to plan what your food's going to look like, what your possibilities are, and you've got to plan around it. And if you don't plan, there's a saying that failing to plan is planning to fail. So if you don't plan, you will end up doing this right here. You'll end up eating poison. I say garbage, but again, it's made out of love, but the ingredients are not very loving. And so the plan, you have to start planning. And so number one, I would suggest, if you're going to somebody else's house, if you're going somewhere else, you want to plan for carrying some food with you potentially. This could be in the form of your cooler or a food suitcase, it depends on where you're staying. If you're going to a family, then they have freezer and refrigerator space and storage, and they're accommodating your special need by allowing you some room for that, great. If they're not very accommodating types of family and they're not going to be, then you have to ask yourself, do you stay with them or do you stay potentially stay in like a kitchenette or stay in a hotel somewhere that's near their home so that you can still take care of you and your family's needs. So again, it depends on the situation of the visit. So if you're traveling through the holidays, and again, maybe it's a one-day travel. If it's a one-day travel, that's pretty easy. It's where it gets difficult is when you get into multiple days and you've got to, plan out several different meals. But my advice to you here is when you're planning, if you're traveling, get yourself a hotel that has a kitchenette and take your food with you. Take coolers, take food suitcases, etc. Get you a hotel, preferably with a kitchenette. And these are, all over the United States in most places. So you should be able to do that. If you're traveling and it's just a one-day event, you can take some food with you. You can also, part of your planning is to call ahead and to have the tough conversation, because if you don't have this following conversation with your family members, what's going to end up happening is they're going to feel slighted when you show up to their house for a holiday meal and you turn your nose up at the food, and this is the first they're hearing of it. So you don't want to just show up after somebody's spent hours and hours in the kitchen. Even though they may not be preparing healthy food, they still put their sweat equity and their love into preparing that meal. So you obviously want to respect that. So it's better to prepare them, that they shouldn't have to cater to your needs, but you need to prepare them that you might not be able to eat the food that they're preparing, and get them in their own heads used to that possibility. So the conversation would go something like this. It would go something along the lines of, hey, I really love your cookies, or I really love your special recipe, whatever that recipe is, fill in the blank, right? I really love that thing that you prepare out of the goodness of your heart every year. But, I'm facing some of my own health challenges, and I've come to find out that I shouldn't be eating gluten or grains, or I shouldn't be eating fill in the blank X, Y, and Z. And because of that, I don't want to put my diet restriction, I don't want to make you overburdened by my diet restriction, even though you're hosting this year. So I just want you to know I'm going to be bringing some of my own things. And it's not because I don't love your fill in the blank favorite food. It's because I just have to take care of myself, because I've been really, really struggling with my health. Thank you so much for understanding that. I love you, and that I would really enjoy eating your food, but I just, I love myself and my health, and I need to recover. And so I just want to thank you in advance for understanding my situation. And again, please don't go out of your way to make different preparations for me. It's too onerous. There's too many restrictions that I have. I'm going to pause there. So that's generally the conversation. Like, if you look at like what I eat, I generally don't eat sugar. I generally don't eat dairy. I don't eat any grain at all. So like, imagine the average American and the average American family, which is your family, right? They're eating these things. You can't expect them to just not eat those things because you're coming to visit. This is why you have to call ahead. This is why you have to have that type of conversation, because you don't want to show up and insult them. And so proper etiquette dictates that you call ahead and you just give them fair warning of what your restrictions are, and that you don't anticipate that they're going to need to cook everything special for you, and that you'll just be taking care of your own food, and you might be bringing a dish and you just didn't want them to feel offended by that, and that you still love them, and that you still love their fill in the blank favorite recipe, whatever that was that you've eaten 100 times in the past 10 years visiting them, that you can no longer consume. So you just got to keep it real. You've got to keep it in alignment with, again, not offending them, not showing up to their house and creating a problem that's going to drive a wedge, in your family, because food's already a big enough of a wedge because of that fear cycle, right? They don't want to look at what they're eating as the potential to damage themselves. And so they're going to have a general tendency more to pick at what you're eating. And so calling ahead prevents that conversation from going the wrong way. Calling ahead prevents that conversation from dominating table talk in your home. And maybe you're a New Yorker. If you're from New York, no offense to you New Yorkers, but my experience with New Yorkers and Texans is we just say it like it is. And if you take offense to that, then what ends up happening is you get offended. But a lot of New Yorkers I've seen where they just yell at each other, right? And that's like family group therapy in a sense, where they just tell each other what they mean, but nobody really ever takes offense because everybody's that way. But again, if that's not who you are, you don't want to put yourself in that environment. So call ahead, plan ahead, pack your food, pack some of your favorite dishes. Now, maybe you're hosting the party at your house. Maybe you're hosting the dinner at your home. And so you're like torn in your own mind between creating a traditional kind of, holiday breading and all that other kind of stuff and creating something that's acceptable for you to eat. And so you're kind of torn because creating stuff that you know isn't safe for you to eat, one, that puts your, all of your kitchenware and everything else in jeopardy from cross-contamination issue. So if you're going to host, you just need to, have one of two things. What I have sometimes do when people want to come, if they want to eat things that I don't eat, like I don't eat grain, and generally I won't use the dairy or the sugar. So if they're coming to my house and they want to bring a dish, and that's the dish that they want to serve themselves from, and I know that that's not mine and that's not something that I can eat because it didn't control the ingredients, then that's fine too. You can offer up a spot on the table for dishes that they might bring, some of their favorites, and that way they don't feel 100% isolated. But I mean, if we look at gluten-free and grain-free, turkey's pretty grain-free. Ham, if you eat it, is pretty grain-free. A lot of your classics can be grain-free. A pumpkin pie, if you make them, can be made without a crust or can be made with a grain-free crust. Like, there are so many different options here that taste just as well if you know how to produce them. And if you're a good chef or a good cook, then that's another option. I actually, at our house, we have a lot of times we host. And so when people come, they remark or comment on just how wonderful the food actually is, because it's real food. There aren't any chemicals. There aren't any pesticides. It's just real food made with real love, and it's all homemade and pretty much made from scratch. And so the commentary is usually pretty good in that way. So, plan for them to be able to bring something if they're hell-bent on having a particular item that is like classic tradition and it's part of, how everybody grew up. Just put that over here on a side of the table where you're not going to get your cross-contamination and create a problem for yourself. So again, if you're trying to navigate those holidays, plan ahead. If you're traveling for a length of time, either plan to bring your food or plan to have a kitchenette or a hotel. Always call ahead of time and let people know what your restrictions are, and let them know that you don't expect them to have to meet that level of restriction for you. That would be impossible for everybody to bake for everybody's different, reactions. But also remember what the spirit of the season is. The spirit of the season is not necessarily just to share food. The spirit of the season is to spend time with people that you either care about or love. And so you can spend time with people without necessarily having to engage in massive, fork, knife, or spoon detriment, right? So you don't have to necessarily literally kill each other with forks by eating bad food. You can show up, and you can show up with your heart and your soul and your spirit, and you can enjoy the conversation, and you can be a part of that family communication, but you don't necessarily have to, again, indulge in all the things that might contribute to a demise of your health. So again, it goes back to being very clear on setting your boundaries. Now, something I'll talk about setting boundaries. If you don't set the boundaries, if you don't plan ahead and you don't call ahead, what you're actually asking for is you're asking for everybody to gang up on you and to try to coerce you into eating food that potentially could detriment you. Now, I see this all the time in my practice. People come in, maybe they're newer to the gluten-free or the grain-free diet, the no grain, no pain diet, the allergy-free diet, and, they didn't call ahead. And so they're back in my office because they've had a trip to the hospital because they didn't call ahead. They got very, very violently sick as a result of that one little bite or that just have one piece type of mentality. So keep that in mind. Like, don't not do this. You owe it to yourself to draw the line in the sand, because you only have one body. And if you don't plan ahead and call ahead and get this taken care of, then you're going to pay a price. And the second that people realize that you have like a gluten sensitivity, for example, let's say your family knows that about you, the second you show up to a holiday meal and start cheating is the second they lose all respect for your diet, and they lose all respect for your needs to be on that diet. And from that point forward, they'll never respect your desire, your wishes to actually need to have gluten, grain-free options at the holiday dinner table. And so you don't want that to happen either. Like, prepare and set yourself up for success during this time. Now, additionally, this is the kind of the family, right? So if we're traveling, or if we're going somewhere. But then there's the office parties, right? And there's the holiday parties at school. So if you've got kids who need to be on a special diet, like, we have to deal with all of the, the candy at school and the cookies and the cakes and the celebratory eating at school as well. Like, that's another big major hurdle for a lot of people and families that need to be on a grain-free diet. And so your kid is feeling socially isolated as a result of showing up to school and everybody's eating the cookie, or everybody's eating the Christmas cookie, or whatever it might be. So in this regard, you really got to have options for your children. If you have them, you want to have options for them so that they at least get some semblance of social norm when they're going to school. So, it's important that you have an option, that you send them to school with an option. If there's a Christmas party or if there's a Thanksgiving party, that you send them to school with options that are kind of almost, I'll say, swaps for the other things. It's important that you teach your kids about good health and about good eating, and not to eat bad food in a sense just to celebrate, because that's what it is. It's celebratory bad food. But you still want them to feel a sense of social connection, because you don't want them to be isolated their whole life because of their diets or because of their food. So again, give them an option. Send them with an option. This is the time of the year. Let's say maybe you don't eat sweets 99% of the time. This is the time of the year where you can let something like that in, and it can be made with healthy, real, whole food ingredients. Instead of sweetening with sugar, for example, you can use maple syrup. You can use something like monk fruit. You can use stevia. So there can still be things that are created and produced that fit the rules, but that are something that your child can also enjoy without the detriment to their families. So again, Christmas parties, holiday parties, you got the school parties, all that. And then there's also your parties, right? Your work parties. Some people will go and they'll have a work Christmas party, or their friend will invite them to a Christmas party, or whatever it is, additional outside of family. And so maybe you've got, 2 meals that you got to have with family, one on one side, one on the other. Maybe then you also have 2 or 3 parties at school for your children. And then you have 2 or 3 parties, one for your work, one for your spouse's work, and then one other that some friends are having. So now you've got like 5 or 6, 7 parties and opportunities to eat horribly that happen in this tight confine of space. And again, it just becomes an issue of planning before you go. If you're talking about like Christmas parties, office parties, things of that nature, my advice is either bring some of your own things, especially if it's like a potluck, bring some of your own food. That way, you can have something that's safe. Or it's eat before you show up. And that way, when you do get there, you can have a drink or something, but you don't necessarily have to worry about whether the food's cross-contaminated or whether you're going to eat something that is hugely detrimental overall to your health. So plan ahead. Really, that's the theme of today. If you're really trying to navigate the holidays and stay healthy, plan ahead by letting people know. Plan ahead by eating first, or by taking your food with you, or by accommodating yourself with a hotel or a kitchenette that allows you to be somewhere over a prolonged period of time without creating a bunch of health issues for yourself or your families. And by planning ahead, you can prevent a lot of the holiday sickness, and even prevent the need for a New Year's resolution. Who wants to gain 10 or 15 pounds, and even worse than that, who wants to create a scenario of chronic inflammation that can last for several months just as a result of catering to other people wanting you to do something that may be damaging to you? Remember that you have to draw the line in the sand and stand up for your health, because if you don't, no one will. And that is the very premise of why we say gluten-free warrior and not gluten-free pacifist. It's not because you should have to go out and battle for eating healthy, but the fact of the matter is, in our environment, in our industrialized countries, the social paradigm is eating bad is okay. Eating bad is acceptable. And if you're going to draw your line in the sand, you need to be a warrior advocate for your health. Okay, let's open it up to questions and concerns. And any of you who have commentary or tips on what you do for holiday eating, I'd love to see what you're doing. So go ahead and chime in and just pipe into the feed what it is that you do when you travel. Let's see here. Hello from Washington State. I had no idea how we'll survive the holidays, Victoria says. Again, hopefully what I just gave you will give you some pieces of tips of advice that will help you kind of navigate this area. Let's see. Be Happy Now says, I eat gluten to make family happy. What about your health and your happiness? Deandra, hello from SoCal. I host Thanksgiving so I can make sure the food is good quality. I make special gluten-free recipes for Hubs and I, and bad recipes. Quotes, air quotes. I love it, Deandra. Air quotes for everyone else. Yeah, I mean, you that's a possibility. You can do that. We actually just make good food for everyone, and if they don't want to eat it, that's fine too. Um, I like this. So, how do you say no? Somebody's asking, how do you say no to family? I think I just kind of gave you an idea for how to say no, but I think ultimately, a lot of times, what happens with a gluten-free diet is a lot of people perceive the diet to be like this trendy thing. So it's like, oh, it's not important. You don't have celiac disease, therefore you don't need to be gluten-free. And they all try to minimize how bad you feel when you actually do get exposure to gluten. And so sometimes what can be helpful to tell people no is to get properly tested. If you got my email today that I sent out, and if you didn't get it, you're not on my email list, make sure you go over to glutenfreesociety.org and sign up there for our newsletter. But one of the videos I sent out to you today was a video on the different types of testing for gluten sensitivity. And so you should go check that out, but you should get tested to determine whether or not gluten sensitivity is an issue that you have, so that you can justify the diet change, so that those around you will at least, will have an opportunity to understand why it's a little bit more important as opposed to not. So getting testing can be a good way to start the conversation, right? So again, imagine having that conversation with a family member instead of saying, hey, I'm on this trendy new diet called the gluten-free diet, because that's the way they're hearing it, right? You can say, hey, I went to my doctor, or I got tested for gluten sensitivity. It comes back, I'm positive, and I was having all these problems. I was having headaches, or I was having liver disease, or whatever it was, right? Because this is what happens. A lot of people are affected by gluten in different ways, and it's not always the same, and it's not always celiac disease. And so you can have that conversation. Well, I finally figured out why I was having that problem. It's because I have a gluten sensitivity issue. And so, I'm coming for the holidays, and I can't wait to see you, and I can't wait to hang out and, like share camaraderie or whatever, whatever you would say to that person. But, because I'm gluten sensitive, I'm just not going to be able to eat, your great cookie recipe or whatever. Again, I think I've beaten this horse to death with you, but it's important, if you are struggling with opening up that conversation, look, go to your doctor, get tested so that you have the actual black and white, so that you can justify having that conversation as a need for yourself and your health versus a trend that you're trying to follow. Because your family's going to perceive it to be a trend, and that's just because the average consumer out there in the world doesn't know anything about gluten. I mean, if you poll the audience what gluten is, 90% of the audience doesn't know what gluten is. And the ones that do know it don't really truly know what it is. They just have a general understanding that it's a healthier diet or it's a health conscious diet, but they really still don't even know what gluten actually is. So don't expect your family to be any different than the average person out there when it comes to understanding what it means. So Crystal says, I still make my family the traditional treats and meals. I don't eat it anymore for years because the pain is too great for a couple of minutes of tasty indulgences. I just wish my family would follow. Crystal, your family would follow if you would lead them. I mean, that is the truth. They, maybe not your husband, just depending, but look, the reality is they'll get on board. If you're on board and you're wholly committed, when they see your commitment, they may not like it. They may kick and fuss and whine, but who's not going to kick and fuss and whine when they're used to, indulging on all kinds of foods? They're going to. But when their palates and their taste buds change, and I'm talking about your immediate family, not necessarily your extended family, but within your home, your immediate family, their taste buds will change as you change the quality of the food in the home. And they will come to like it, and they will come to prefer it once they've embraced it with you. Let's see here. Blaze says, with friends, I just tell them that I'm under doctor's orders not to eat certain things. With family, I don't have to worry because many of them also have autoimmune and eat the same way. That's awesome. If you've got family that are eating in the same way, that's like the best of both worlds, because then everybody can get together and food can equal a loving experience as opposed to a tormenting one. Let's see here. Can you give us examples of what you prepare and eat for the holidays? Yeah, I mean, I eat, we'll have a turkey. It'll be organic. It'll be free range. Um, and we'll have a litany, probably a litany of green beans. We have our own garden, so we grow those. We'll have a number of different side dish vegetables. So cauliflower rice will probably be on the menu. We'll make gravy. That gravy will probably be produced out of some type of arrowroot flour. We'll have probably some tapioca-based rolls. This is one of the few times of the year that we might eat some of the grain-free alternative breads. So those of you who don't know about Warrior Bread, we have about 20 different recipes that you can create with Warrior Bread. Some of them like holiday stuffing and other holiday types of breads. We also have other recipes that we use. There's almond breads, and we sometimes will make a pumpkin bread. So, I mean, there are plenty of things that can be put out on the table that taste good. And remember that holiday, they're a tradition that we try to keep. They're traditional meals and things of that nature, and the turkey is one of those traditions. I don't recommend buying your turkey if it's not organic. That's one of the worst types of birds that you can eat if it's not organic. But if you're trying to keep some of those traditions, it's not hard to do. Most of the real traditions are actually real food. You just have to, take the time and the effort to pull the recipes, to look at the ingredients, and to make healthy swap or substitutes when it calls for something that you can't have. I mean, as a perfect example, a lot of your recipes that call for wheat flour or that call for for flour itself, you can use something like cassava or tapioca or tiger nut flour. I mean, so there are a lot of options. And I actually did an article one time, if you're looking for flour substitutes, did one on grain-free flours. If you go over to Visit Gluten-Free Society, you can type in what grain-free flours, then you can pull that article up with all the different types of flours, and it talks about their properties and what they're good for, etc. So that might be helpful for you as well. Let's see here. Since I tested positive for gluten, I just tell them that I tested and I'm positive. They accept that. I'm so glad I tested positive. It makes being healthier easier for me, or healthy easier for me. Sandy says that's another point, kind of what I was saying earlier. And two of you now chimed in saying that just by having the right test and knowing that you could go to your family members with that gave better validation and made it easier. Nancy says, eat before and just drink at the parties, with a winky face. Can you name the test you went through and how much it costed? That's in reply to Sandy. I don't know what test Sandy did, but the test that I would recommend, the simplest way to know is genetic testing. And that you can check that out. You can read more about that on Gluten Free Society as well. I like this. Josh says, my kids and husband prefer my gluten-free cooking because they all say they feel better and feel horrible when we eat bad. So this is great. So this is a message. I'm going to comment a little bit deeper on this, Josh. I thank you for sharing that, because what happens is a lot of people never teach their family members that the connection between how you feel bad and what you eat. And so they never know. They don't ever even put two and two together. They don't think, oh, migraine headache equals that sandwich. They don't think that the joint pain might be as a result of getting some cornbread. They just don't make the connection. And so in families that talk about food and talk about health and exercise together and share healthy knowledge together, generally, this is what I was talking about with Crystal. No, I'm not trying to pick on you, Crystal, but this is what I was talking about earlier, is if you sit down and have these conversations and people start to realize it and you change the way you eat as a family unit, then everybody kind of engages with that and can come on board. And you might get resistance at first. Most families do. Resistance is not an uncommon thing. You just have to be willing to draw your line in the sand. I look at it like this: as a father, and I'm sure many of you listening are fathers, or many of you listening are mothers. Look, as a parent, we'll just say it like that. you've got to be willing to stand up for what's right for your kids. You know, a lot of parents today, and this is, you know, I'm going to go off on a rant here. A lot of parents today try to befriend their children. They try to be good friends with their kids. They try to just let their not interfere. They try not to really parent their kids. They try to have kind of a self-parenting style. But the reality is most kids are confused as hell because their parents won't parent them and their schools aren't really teaching them and everybody's giving them trophies for not doing anything. And so they're very confused because they don't know what to do. You have to remember that young kids need guidance. They need black and white rules. This is what establishes the social order of things. And if they don't have that, then everything becomes confusing and then they're disgruntled and they're not happy and you're disgruntled and you're not happy. But it, you know, sometimes being a parent, unfortunately, is like, it's harder to say no than it is to say yes. And sometimes you just have to say no. And drawing a line in the sand about food and about exercise, about nutrition, about good health is the same thing, in my opinion, about drawing a line about a proper education. There's certain things that you need to, you know, teach your children about and that you need to have as a foundation for them to grow up and be healthy. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're going to struggle with them and they're going to struggle with you. Let's see here. Miley, I think I said your name right, Miley. She says, for 25 years, I've brought a gluten dish to my family dinner. This year, I'm bringing roasted vegetables. Love it. Love it. Let's see, Janet, I just started reading your book. My family and I just finished day 1 of your meal plan. Thank you. Looking forward to the rest of the week. That's awesome, Janet. Thanks for sharing that because you started the meal plan like in the middle of the best time of the year to start it. Most people would say it's the worst time of the year to start like a diet change. I say it's the best because if you can go no grain, no pain, you know, in Thanksgiving time and in Christmas time, then the rest of the year is a piece of gluten-free cake or grain-free cake, so to speak. It's much, much easier. Jessica, going to my in-laws' house and we'll be bringing some paleo things to share, green bean casserole, pumpkin muffins. They'll be bringing butternut squash soup, turkey breast, and gravy, etc. for me. So there you go. There's some more food ideas for those of you still struggling with some ideas. All great suggestions. Let's see here. Do I believe in the specific carbohydrate diet? I believe in the U diet, Mary. What does that mean, the U diet? The U diet is the diet that's designed for you. I don't believe that any one diet can be generalized for everyone. And so, you know, I wrote No Grain, No Pain as an international best-selling book. It is a generalization, so maybe I'm eating my own words here, but no, it's really, the diet was designed more to educate people. But the U diet is, there's 3 rules of nutrition. And those of you who've been following me for any length of time know what those are. As a matter of fact, if somebody can type in those 3 rules here in the next 5 minutes, I'll answer. I'll come back to that in just a minute. But if somebody can type in those 3 rules, the first person who types them in and gets them right, we're going to give you a signed, autographed copy of No Grain, No Pain as a gift. And if you already have a copy, you can give it away to a friend or someone you love as a Christmas gift. But we'll come back to that in just a minute. So can you give examples of cross-contamination at the dinner table if you don't touch it? If you're not touching the things on the table, the biggest way you're going to get cross-contamination at the dinner table is really if somebody was using or making a lot of bread and so the dough was being kind of tossed around and kneaded. Remember that dough can, flour can be aerosolized, so that can spread out and disperse and cross-contaminate food that you might be eating, but it can also be something that you can breathe in. I once had a client who worked in a building that shared the same air ducts with a bakery, and he was very gluten sensitive, and he couldn't get better because he was breathing in wheat flour all day until we figured out that he was sharing air ducts with the bakery. That's the biggest risk for cross-contamination. Beyond that, it's your traditional, eating foods that you think are gluten-free or eating foods. Another big mistake I see people making is they trust that their family member is going to know enough about gluten-free to make them something. And so what ends up happening is somebody says, oh, I made everything gluten-free. And then when you really start probing them and asking questions, which is uncomfortable to do, you don't want somebody to do something out of the love and kindness of their heart, and then you're probing them about every ingredient. But it happens, where where they think they made it gluten-free, but they didn't know enough about the diet. Remember, the diet itself is a 12-week learning curve. The average relative that you have is not going to be able to like masterfully chef out a bunch of gluten-free stuff and probably get it right. They're probably going to get it mostly wrong, and that puts you at risk, which is why you don't want to trust. This is why you have the conversation. Look, I know that you love me, but I also know that you want me to be healthy, so I'm just going to be bringing my own food. Like, have that conversation, because if you don't and you allow them to figure it out, for the week, they're not going to figure it out. Again, it's a 12-week learning curve. Don't really suggest that you let that happen. I like this one. Marlene says, roasted veggies travel well, like Brussels and Brussels sprouts and sweet potato are pretty. I do need a good roll or biscuit recipe. Can I use your bread mix for biscuits? Yes, we actually have one. So I don't know if we can get that link up or not on the Gluten-Free Society. We have a cookbook page. It's the Warrior Bread Community Cookbook. And so there are a lot. We just put up some new ones as well. We've got some new rolls and some new holiday things that can be produced with it. So yes. Everyone who comes to my house all eat gluten-free, because that is all my house is. I love that, Allison. The food is so good, people come from out of state. That's right. Again, gluten-free doesn't mean taste-free. And a lot of people don't realize that, but when you actually cook with real and wholesome ingredients, the food, not only is it made from love, it's made from the right place, but it tastes really, really good. Katie says, we celebrate with others who eat paleo AIP. It's so refreshing to have many options and not have to explain. Seem weird to others. Yeah, it can. And that's great that you have a community around you. And I would encourage all of you to kind of try to find that community where you can also have that same type of, again, camaraderie in what you're eating. Let's see. I make and bring my gluten-free and dairy-free food to all social activities where everyone will be eating. I mean, that's another way to do it. And if, again, a lot of people at first are kind of embarrassed by doing that, but don't be embarrassed by being healthy or trying to maintain your health. There are a number of interpretations as to what gluten-free actually means. You're right, Mary Ellen. That's part of why I wrote No Grain, No Pain, was to kind of dispel the myth of what the gluten-free definition is. Crustless pumpkin pie, somebody's chiming in, but didn't miss the crust. Yeah, that's possible. Bobby says, yep, you're right. Family, along with others, will always test you because they're not going to take you serious unless you do. Proactive communication along with walking the talk is the key to winning people over. Absolutely. When you fold, when you break, they lose all their respect for you. And when you stand your ground and you stand firm, they gain a respect for that, and they come to acknowledge it. So keep that in mind. Yeah, somebody's chiming in. Cross-contamination can happen with utensils. It can. Cutting boards, any kind of porous cooking material, that can happen as well. Let's see here. Vista says, going camping with the family for Thanksgiving. I'm doing the cooking, so gluten-free food, banana almond muffins. So there's another one, banana almond muffin. Free-range turkey, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, mashed potatoes, all grain-free, all good options. So this is an off question, but we'll talk about it because some people are going to be asking, how do you improve your digestion? See, here's the other thing. So this is a good question, Paul. Paul wants to know how to increase stomach acid to increase bile production. You don't really increase stomach acid to increase bile production. Bile is actually produced as a bicarbonate release from your pancreas more than it is from an acid issue. So if you want to improve your bile, vitamin C can do that. Eating bitters can do that. Drinking lemon water can help stimulate bile flow. Like, those are all things that you can do before the meal if you're trying to improve your bile flow. So those are options. But a lot of you, maybe you're going to be eating great food, healthy food, right? But one of the other things, and we haven't really talked about this, but thanks to Paul's comment, we can kind of add it. It's a lot of people will do overeating of healthy foods. And so what in that regard, if you're going to overeat, like, What should you do to improve your ability to digest that food so that you don't create an overeating issue? And so remember, many of you with gluten sensitivity issues do have gastrointestinal damage, and so it's a little bit harder for you to eat in higher frequencies. So number one, you can just, obviously keep your servings real. But some people are going to overeat regardless, even if they're eating healthy. And so in that regard, taking a digestive enzyme formulation could be very supportive of good digestion. Something like Ultra Digest or Gluten Shield would be both good options before the meal. About 10 minutes before the meal can help really support your digestion when you're going to go in and eat a lot more food than what's typical. Can any of the Warrior Bread recipes successfully substitute the flax egg and still have the rolls or pizza crust rise? Substitute the flax for egg? So if you substitute the flax for the egg, it still makes a great crust. It still makes a good roll. Either way, we've done it both ways. It's why we actually added that sub as an option on the recipe. Let's see. I have family that think I'm lazy because I won't help in the kitchen during gatherings. I can't even touch gluten crumbs. I react. I hear them whisper about me. I don't know what to tell you there, Sandra. I mean, I get what you're saying. Like, you don't want to be in there. If you're that reactive, you definitely don't want to be in there. But maybe you could, as they're whispering, you could just confront them. Hey, I'm right here. I can hear what you're saying. I appreciate it if you'd say it to my face. Like, that might be, a confrontational way to handle it. But I can guarantee you, if you did it one time, they'd quit whispering about you, and they may still talk about you, but it won't be in the same room. And then you don't have to be uncomfortable, and they can be uncomfortable. Let's see here. I love this. Nicole says, everybody's aware that this is our lifestyle, not just a diet. When traveling to visit family, we bring a cooler with pre-cooked meals and frozen grain-free meats and a couple cooking pans. We cooked meals for my mom during our visit to her, and she asked for the recipes. I love it. So this is like, really, when you think about it, this is nothing more than bringing real food back into the kitchen. People really like real food. They're just so used to eating processed garbage that's full of filler ingredients and grain and et cetera that they don't even know what real food tastes like anymore. So when they get a hint of it, they really come back to it and they really love it. So great points, Nicole. Thanks for chiming in. Let's see. Scroll down for me on, there we go. Is there any piece of advice to treat chronic? Well, that is off topic. And for question, piece of advice to treat chronic low blood pressure, it becomes a problem mainly in hot weather. I mean, biggest things. You go back and watch my show on blood pressure if you haven't already, Marie. We did an entire hour-long segment on blood pressure that you're going to find super helpful. Just go check out. You make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, and you just have to go back into. There's a playlist called "Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain," and you just find the show listed there. Okay, so I mentioned 3 rules earlier, and I haven't had anybody get it right. It's ditch cardio, get stronger, eat clean. Are those the 3 rules? No, those aren't the 3 rules. Have we had any other? Doesn't look like we've had anybody other chime. So I'm going to go ahead and come back to that. So there's 3 rules in nutrition. The first rule is you can't get healthy eating food that's not healthy. Doesn't matter who you are. Doesn't matter if you are healthy. You can't stay healthy eating food that's not healthy. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, if it makes you feel bad, put it down. Don't eat it. Don't eat it again and again and again. Don't keep repeating the same mistake over and over again. What do we call somebody who makes the same decision repetitively expecting a different outcome? We call them insane. So don't treat yourself. Don't act with insanity as it relates to your food. So if it feels bad when you eat it, stop eating it. And then the third rule is don't eat what you're intolerant, sensitive, or allergic to. And that's where, checking in with a great doc who does these types of tests might be very valuable to you if you're struggling with chronic illness. Because the third rule is one that really, it has to be objectified. It's hard to know. I mean, you can do a food elimination diet, and that can be somewhat helpful. But generally speaking, the first 2 rules are the only ones you can really apply without accurate testing. Diane says, all gluten-free, dairy-free food made the apricot cookies from your book today. Everyone loved them. We'll have to make more before Thanksgiving Day. Yeah, for those of you who do have No Grain, No Pain, know that actually is, it's a best-selling book. because of the knowledge and the information that you get scientifically, but it's also a cookbook. There's actually 31 recipes in No Grain, No Pain, and they're home recipes. They're not recipes that we just, a lot of recipe cookbook buyers, you buy a cookbook and there's like one good recipe in the whole thing and you spent $30 on a cookbook that was terrible. Nope, these are all my wife's like family favorites. These are all awesome recipes that I eat personally at home. So there's not a single recipe in the book that we don't make consistently in the house. So those of you who are asking what I eat, it's a great way to know a lot about how I eat in those 31 recipes. I think I answered this one already. What am I having for Thanksgiving? I'm going to have a pumpkin pie, but it's going to have no crust. And we're going to probably use coconut milk as the dairy-based fat agent that goes into it. It'll be sweetened either with monk fruit or stevia. I think we sweetened them with stevia last year. They were actually really good. We're going to make some banana bread, and we're going to use warrior bread to help do that. So where you take some bananas and you mash them up and you mix in some of the bread mix, and it makes a really good banana bread as a dessert. So those are a couple of my favorites. Pumpkin pie, I love it. It's like, for me, that's the holiday classic designed recipe for dessert. It's the one I love, but just no crust. But we do have a crust recipe too. There's a warrior bread crust. If you love your crust and just can't get over not having the crust, then you can make it with the warrior bread if you have some. Let's see. My family is just the opposite. They are super conscientious about being sure I can eat what they're fixing. Yet another reason for me to be thankful this season. Love that. Loving families care about their family members too, and will be super conscientious. It's great. I'm glad you have that. Thanks for sharing. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so what happens when your gut ferments all of these clean options? I can't even use any spices or salt, pepper, etc. If you're in that bad of a way where you're fermenting everything and you can't use much of anything, then you need to get with a doc. This Thanksgiving is not the meal of celebration for you. And that goes for any of you. Any of you listening that are chronically sick and you're struggling, like Thanksgiving and Christmas parties aren't the thing for you to be doing right now. The thing for you to be doing right now is figuring out why you're struggling, why that's happening. So best thing that you can do is get with a good, in my opinion, a functional medicine practitioner or doctor who can help you navigate why some of that stuff is going on. You can start, if you want to start the simplest way, is start with No Grain, No Pain. Start with chapter 7, chapter 8 in the 30-day diet, phase 1 and phase 2 diet, and see if that improves. And if it's not, if you're still struggling, then it's time to quit guessing and it's time to get professional help. I don't wish that on anybody to be fermenting that poorly or that badly, all the things that you're trying to eat. But there is hope and there is help. You just have to seek it out. If you can't find somebody, luckily, call my office. Call my office and schedule an appointment. We can jump on the phone or jump on a call and hash it out and see if you're missing something. Okay. All right. So let's end it with, I wish you all a very, very wonderful Thanksgiving. And from my family to yours, I wish you all the best. And I hope that you have a wonderful meal shared with wonderful people and love around your table, but true love and not the kind that makes everybody sick. So I will see you next week, next Monday, same time, for another episode of Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. You can hit that bell icon and make sure you come visit me at glutenfreesociety.org. If you already are on our newsletter and you're already getting our emails, I'm just going to throw out a little teaser for you here. We've got a big sale coming up in 2 days for our Black Friday sale. Stay close to your email for more information, more details. It's our biggest sale of the year on gluten-free food products as well as gluten-free supplements. You're not going to want to miss out on this. So just a teaser, heads up that it's going to start on Friday morning, very, very early Friday morning. So if you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, make sure that you do. We're going to be informing you about how to take advantage of this massive sale here in the next day or so. So this is Dr. Osborne wishing you an excellent holiday season and happy Thanksgiving to you all. We'll see you next week. Hey, don't forget to tune in next week, same time, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, for another Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain show. Bring all your toughest health questions to me. I look forward to answering them. And before you leave today, make sure you hit subscribe. And once you do, click that bell. That bell is going to allow us to remind you right before we go live.